morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to this program. Tonight, we'd like to have a discussion on a video. This is a rare thing. Here is a Black person admitting that we have a problem. I can bet you he's not a politician, at least not of the caliber of the Zimbabwean politician, will never admit that they've done something wrong. They always find somebody else to blame for everything. But let's listen to this video and then we will discuss it.
Let me now turn to the theme that I've been asked to speak about today. And that is for the world to respect Africa. Now, the first thing that I want to underline is that respect is never a given. It cannot be purchased. It must be earned. And it is earned based not on rhetoric or request, but based on action. Concrete action. Consistent action over time. Saudi Arabia has oil, as does Nigeria. Kuwait has oil, as does Nigeria. Qatar has abundant gas, as does Nigeria and other countries. Yet Nigeria is the country with the largest share of its population living below extreme poverty line in 2023 in Africa. That is not a gold medal that we should be proud about. Clearly, there is something fundamentally wrong in our management, or rather mismanagement of our natural resources. It is also clear that if we continue to mismanage these natural resources, we will remain stuck. I have urged African governments to stop securing loans backed by their natural resources. And that's because those natural resource-backed loans are not transparent. They're expensive. They make debt resolution very, very difficult. If that trend continues, it will be a disaster for Africa. If we manage our natural resources well, Africa has no reason to be poor. We have $6.2 trillion of natural resources. So how in the world are we poor? We simply need to pull up our socks, stamp our corruption, and manage our natural resources in the interest of our countries and in the interest of our people. And let me say, the resources of a country does not belong in the pockets of powerful and rich individuals. It belongs for the state to be used for the benefit of the people of that country. There must be accountability on our natural resources.
Benjamin, what do you think of that one?
Good day to you. Thank you for to our viewers for joining us. I mean, I think that is point blank, and anybody that denies that, Africa is got no, they got no excuse for us to be where we are now, where we are wallowing. Most of our people are wallowing in poverty, and our children are malnourished. They have nothing to eat. Yet you find out, I mean, I believe Africa is the richest continent of all the continents that are there. Why are we subjecting ourselves to such misery? I mean, he was spot on for me. I believe, he was direct, and he that is an ear, let him hear. That's the point that I would first bring about.
I agree with you. I think one of the problems we have had in Africa, why we are in the sorry state we are in, is this tendency of always finding a scapegoat for our own failures. We have the resources. Why are we failing to manage them? I mean, you look at the case of Zimbabwe. Just on Wednesday, President Mnangagwa declared the national disaster. 2.7 million Zimbabweans are facing starvation. This is a country that before independence, and maybe the first decade after independence, was the grain basket of SADC. We grew enough crops, not only to feed our own people, but with surplus to export to the neighboring countries and beyond. Zanu PF in 2000 started seizing all the farms, and now the country cannot produce enough to feed its own people, let alone for export. Yes, this year people will say, oh, we're the drought, so it's not our fault. That's true. But every 2 or 3 years, Zimbabwe has had to import food to feed its own people. Ever since the Zanu PF land seizures. That is where we've got the problem. And the regime will never admit that it has failed. It has always found a scapegoat. And the most favorite one, sanctions. That is where we have got a problem.
I agree with you. If we were to bring it closer to home to say, particularly in Zimbabwe, I think Zimbabwe, for its population, I think it's one of the wealthiest countries that that are out there. But then you find out that it's just a basket case now from what it was before. I mean, Zimbabwe was, I would like to say, a giant. I mean, the currency was strong. Everything was looking towards, as if we were heading in the right direction, and we had a say in things. But now we are the ones that are beggars. Everything. Right now, you were saying that the president declared a national disaster. Here he is, after declaring the national disaster, he is asking its citizens that are outside in the diaspora to say, please send money for food or donate money for food. But this same character that is declaring, that is begging for food, he just bought over 100 fleet of cars, buying for chips, but he knew there was an impending drought. For Zimbabwe, I mean, I find it very difficult. There's no medicines in the hospital, but there is money to globetrot, build museums and resurface tasks. What about your own? This is where I think that is where corruption starts. To say, you look so far, and yet you forget the basics. I think the reason why you end up doing things that are far-fetched is to try and cover up for the mess that you have done. So I believe this is what is actually happening in the continent of Africa. We are busy trying to cover up the mess, that we look, like the ideal candidates, that we know what we are doing, yet we are actually making it worse. We are stirring up the dirt. I think it's just a sad case, really, a very, very sad case. And we don't want to go with the level of, into the level of corruption that is in Africa. Get in Zimbabwe, it's just too much. It's beyond imagination now. It's pathetic.
It is indeed pathetic. There is now talk of Zimbabwe coming up with new currency, restructuring its current system. I think this is just an excuse for zeros, for shedding some zeros from our currency. No doubt the present Zimbabwe dollar will be losing a lot of the zeros with the new currency that's being launched. We'll know on Friday how many zeros we've shed. As long as we have got hyperinflation, I really don't see anything changing here. We can print new currency with new values, but in a couple of weeks, months, those dollars will be absolutely useless. According to the social media, these are going to be the new currency, the new Zimbabwe dollar, $20 note. It's being produced now. It will be pegged to foreign currency, maybe, I don't know, 1 to 1 Zimbabwe dollar. But I can tell you within a few months, it will have lost its value too. And we're ending up with a situation where we're losing just the number of zeros. It's just another excuse for shedding off a few zeros so that we don't end up with printing the $100 trillion note, which will be worth less than $1 US. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe.
I believe we've been here before. I mean, we've done this. It's nothing new, really. Where they shed zeros. I think for the second dispensation, as they call themselves, it's them trying to cover face, to say they have failed directly. They are doing exactly the same thing what Mugabe did. There is absolutely nothing different from what Mugabe was doing, and I believe, for money to have the actual value, yes, it's inflation. It has also to do with consumer confidence. Are the people confident in this, setup with the currency, the situation, the political situation, the economic situation in Zimbabwe? At some point, the president said that Zimbabwe is open for business, and everybody believed him. That day changed overnight, and with whatever he had managed to build, died with it. The confidence that he had managed to build amongst the people died with it the moment he went back to Zanu PF default settings. So this is not new. We've been there. We shared a couple of zeros, and we know when they come back harder. Within, like you said, in a few months, it will be passing exactly this year stage that we are at right now.
Yeah, I think what people must have realize here is that Zimbabwe will never have any meaningful economic recovery as long as the country remains a pariah state, ruled by corrupt and incompetent leaders who have managed to stay in power because they rig elections. It all revolves that issue, rigged elections. Zimbabwe did not have free, fair, and credible elections last year. It is a pity that the opposition did not have the common sense to insist, even when they had the chance to implement the reforms to stop the rigging. They failed to do so. And last year, when they were told you should not participate in these flawed elections, they still participated, and thus giving the regime the legitimacy. As long as Zimbabwe remains a pariah state, the Zimbabwe economy will never recover. That is the reality. And like we started at the beginning of this program, we started talking of how the regime likes to find scapegoats. No doubt the regime will blame the sanctions, but actually sanctions have nothing to do with it. Nothing. Our failure to govern ourselves is at the root of why Zimbabwe is a failed state. And we are not just a failed state in Zimbabwe, we are also a mafia state, because now the mafia have infiltrated literally everything. Mnangagwa is no more than just the godfather of the mafia sitting at the top, calling all the shots. Those of us who watched the gold mafia last year will remember that Mnangagwa was number one. They didn't want to call him by name, they called him number one. He's the top guy. Anything that he says goes. And by the way, none of those gold mafia guys or those who collaborated in it, as far as I know, have ever been arrested. They are still at large, and indeed, they are still very much in business. That's the tragedy. And most of their wealth was used to bankroll the rigged elections of last year. And no doubt will be used in future to buy the loyalties of everybody in the various institutions, including the opposition itself. We do not have a really meaningful, competent opposition party in Zimbabwe. In Triple C, I've said it here and I'll say it again, we have got nothing more than Zanu PF Team B that is playing to give Team A legitimacy. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Do you want to give your closing remarks?
Thank you. So in closing, I would say, we are in this state, like rightfully you said, because of the toxicity of our economic and political and social environment. It's gone to the levels that, if it continues this way, we will find ourselves less and less and less, richer in terms of natural resources, as these are being plundered left, right, and center. Nowadays, it's no longer, done under deals are no longer done under the table. They are brandished for you to see and do absolutely nothing about it. But we can do something about it. First of all, like I always say, it all comes down with our own ability to think for ourselves and to stop following what people say, regardless whether it makes sense or it doesn't. We have our own destiny in our own hands, and I think it begins by thinking for ourselves and thinking outside the box. And once we do that, we will be able to elect ourselves or to find ourselves the right candidate. I mean, Zimbabwe is got a population of 15 million, plus 15 million individuals. Brilliant minds are in there, but it is for us to choose the right candidates, not the ones that talk too much or that are good at talking nonsense, but the ones that actually talk sense and make sense at the end of the day, and are willing to do the dirty work that is required for us to achieve from this whole pariah state to being a democratic state, to get us back into democratic space. And that's the only time where we will be able to get our leaders to be accountable for whatever they are doing in office, not the state that we are, where at the end of the video, the gentleman says, all resources belong to the country, and here was somebody saying all land belongs to the president. That is just nonsense. But we have hope that we can change it, but it begins with us. It does not begin with anybody else, with us, the citizens of Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. And to the listeners, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And good night.